Imagine walking down a softly lit hospital corridor when, all of a sudden, a tiny puppy, with eyes brimming with sorrow and tears that seem almost human, runs towards you. What hidden pain lies behind those eyes? Stay with us as we unravel a story that will touch your heart and stir your soul. On a chilly winter evening, the renowned St. Mary's Hospital, known for its impeccable care and meticulously maintained halls, was cloaked in an almost surreal atmosphere. Neon lights cast gentle, dancing reflections on the icy floor, as if whispering secrets of days gone by. Amid the usual flurry of patients and busy medical staff, an unexpected event was about to shatter the routine. So small, so scruffy puppy, its fur damp with melting snow, dashed into the emergency room. With drooping ears and a cry of despair that echoed like a heartfelt plea, the little creature captured the attention of everyone present. Its whimpers, filled with profound loneliness and abandonment, instantly silenced the clamor, leaving both staff and patients wondering, what could have driven this tiny soul to seek help in such a cold, impersonal place? Dr. Andrew Miller, a compassionate and highly respected physician nearing the end of a long shift, was the first to notice the heart-wrenching scene. As the puppy's tearful eyes met his, a surge of empathy washed over him. "What's wrong, little one?" he murmured, gently bending down to comfort the fragile creature. In that moment, every tear on the puppy's face spoke of a hidden story of loss and yearning that no one in that hospital had ever expected. Just as Dr. Miller cradled the trembling puppy, a startling sound cut through the silence, the distant wail of sirens growing louder by the second, accompanied by flashing lights that began to illuminate the hospital's entrance. What began as a tender, mysterious encounter was rapidly spiraling into an unfolding enigma that would soon engulf the entire facility. This is the story of a puppy whose innocent, tearful run to a caring doctor set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of St. Mary's Hospital, a story of hope, heartache, and the unexpected strength that can emerge from even the smallest acts of vulnerability. Dr. Andrew Miller had always prided himself on his composed demeanor, the kind honed over decades of practice at St. Mary's Hospital. That winter evening, as he wrapped up another long shift, he couldn't shake the image of the tearful puppy that had so unexpectedly burst into his world. In the sterile, softly lit corridors of the hospital, Andrew's calm professionalism was about to meet an emotion so raw that it would forever alter the course of his night, and perhaps his life. Earlier that day, the hospital buzzed with its usual routine. Nurses hurried from room to room, doctors conferred over patient charts, and visitors filled the waiting areas with gentle murmurs of hope and concern. Yet even amid this orchestrated chaos, a sense of quiet dignity pervaded the halls. St. Mary's was not just an institution, it was a sanctuary for those in need. And it was in this hallowed space that the small, scruffy puppy had made its silent plea for help. The puppy, whom the staff would soon affectionately begin calling Buddy, had a look that belied his tender age, eyes too old for his size, as if he carried the weight of untold sorrows. In the minutes following his dramatic entrance, whispers began to circulate among the night shift. Some speculated that the little creature might have escaped from a nearby shelter, while others wondered if he had simply wandered in from the bitter cold. But none could explain the unmistakable desperation in his eyes. Dr. Miller, still holding Buddy in his arms, felt his heart soften with each gentle pat. The puppy's fragile state struck a chord deep within him, a reminder that healing wasn't confined solely to the human body, but often extended to the spirit. As he carried Buddy into a quiet corner of the emergency department, Andrew's thoughts drifted back to his own past, to a time when compassion had been his anchor amid life's uncertainties. "Are you all right, little one?" Andrew murmured, his voice tender and reassuring as he examined Buddy's quivering form. The puppy's small body trembled not just from the cold, but from a lingering fear. It was then that Andrew noticed something odd, a tiny tag dangling from Buddy's collar. Its inscription nearly faded by time. Though the tag was barely legible, it hinted at a name: Sam. The possibility that this puppy once belonged to someone tugged at the doctor's conscience. Across the hall, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez, known for her empathetic approach and decades of care, caught sight of the unfolding scene. "Dr. Miller, I've seen him before," she said softly, stepping up with concern in her eyes. "He's been coming here every night for the past week, always in this state." Evelyn's words sent a shiver down Andrew's spine. Why would a tiny creature be drawn repeatedly to this place, and what unseen sorrow compelled him to seek refuge here? As the duo discussed the mystery of Buddy's nightly visits, the hospital's tension escalated. Outside, the distant wail of sirens began to mingle with the murmurs of an approaching crowd. Security cameras, normally a silent guardian over the premises, had started to record unusual activity around the hospital entrance. The building's pristine facade, so meticulously maintained during the day, now stood as a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Inside, a subtle but persistent sense of foreboding took root. The police presence that loomed outside hinted at deeper troubles, a story beyond a stray puppy's desperate run. Andrew's colleagues, busy with their rounds, glanced toward the entrance with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Whispers spread that there might be more to Buddy's story than anyone had yet imagined. In that moment of uncertainty, Dr. Miller resolved to take action. He knew that caring for Buddy wasn't merely an act of charity. It was a mission to uncover the mystery that bound the puppy to the hospital. His decision was simple but resolute. He would stay by Buddy's side, learn his story, and do everything within his power to help him find peace. As the night deepened, the hospital's corridors grew quieter, punctuated by the steady hum of vital machines and the occasional call for assistance. Andrew and Evelyn worked together, tracking the subtle clues left behind by Buddy's visits. They reviewed security footage from the previous nights and combed through records to see if any patients might be connected to the mysterious puppy. Yet, every lead seemed to vanish like a whisper in the wind. The weight of unanswered questions pressed down on them. Who was Buddy really? And why did he choose this hospital as his haven? Each unanswered query only deepened the mystery, leaving behind a trail of tender heartache that resonated with every staff member, especially those who had seen too much loss over the years. For the women among the staff, who had long embraced the art of caring with gentle hands and compassionate hearts, Buddy's plight stirred echoes of their own past sorrows and hopes. His quiet, soulful eyes seemed to tell a story that transcended words, a story that promised redemption, healing, and perhaps a glimpse of a long-forgotten joy. Thus, as the night stretched on and the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, Dr. Miller and Nurse Ramirez prepared themselves for the challenges ahead. With Buddy cradled in Andrew's arms, they stepped forward into a mystery that would soon intertwine the fates of a grieving puppy, a dedicated doctor, and an entire hospital, setting the stage for a night none would ever forget. As dawn broke over St. Mary's Hospital, the mystery of Buddy continued to haunt Dr. Andrew Miller and Nurse Evelyn Ramirez. The first light of day revealed more than just the fading shadows of a long, troubled night. It unveiled layers of a story that neither of them could easily dismiss. Buddy, now quietly resting on a soft blanket in a small makeshift nook near the nurses' station, seemed to embody a silent plea for answers. Dr. Miller couldn't shake the nagging questions that had been echoing through his mind all night. "There's something about him," he confided to Evelyn as she adjusted his stethoscope. "Every time I look into his eyes, I see a lifetime of loss and longing." Her expression, seasoned with years of compassion and hard-won wisdom, deepened with understanding. "I've seen many broken souls pass through these halls, but this little creature, he feels different," Evelyn murmured. "It's as if his sorrow is tied to something or someone here." Determined to unravel the enigma, Andrew and Evelyn set out to gather every piece of information they could. They began by re-watching the previous night's security footage. The grainy images revealed fleeting moments, a glimpse of Buddy standing silently outside a particular wing of the hospital, a slow, almost ritualistic shuffle toward a room that had seen its share of heartache. The room belonged to an elderly patient, Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, known for her quiet dignity and a past steeped in sorrow. Whispers among the staff had long spoken of her unfulfilled love and loss, but few had ever looked beyond the surface. Curiosity piqued. Andrew decided to pay a visit to Mrs. Whitman's room. Although frail, the woman possessed an air of resilience that belied her years. "Mrs. Whitman," he greeted gently as he entered. Buddy tucked carefully under one arm. "I'm Dr. Miller. I was hoping you might help me understand something. Something about a little puppy that seems to come to us every night." Mrs. Whitman's eyes, clouded with age yet sharp with insight, softened as she listened. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, "sometimes animals see what we cannot. They sense the loneliness that lingers long after love has gone." Her cryptic words only deepened the mystery. Was Buddy connected to the tales of lost love and lingering grief that had followed Mrs. Whitman for decades? Andrew felt a tug at his heart, as if the small puppy was a messenger of memories too painful, yet too precious to forget. Later that morning, the hospital's rhythm was interrupted by a flurry of activity. A call came through the intercom, a news alert that the hospital was soon to be swarmed by police. The officers were responding not to a crime, but to a series of anonymous tips about suspicious activity on the hospital grounds. In the midst of these unfolding events, Buddy's presence had inadvertently become the focus of attention. Rumors began to circulate among the staff. Could the puppy be linked to something far more sinister than a simple act of abandonment? Had he witnessed something he shouldn't have? Inside the break room, tension mounted. A group of nurses, many of whom were mothers or grandmothers themselves, exchanged worried glances. "I can't help but feel that this is more than a stray animal's plight," one nurse confided softly. "There's a sadness in him that speaks of deep and hidden pain." Her words resonated with Evelyn, who found herself recalling the hardships of her own past, a series of losses and challenges that had left scars only time could mend. At the same time, Dr. Miller was wrestling with his internal conflicts. His commitment to his duty as a healer was now interwoven with a personal mission to uncover the truth behind Buddy's persistent visits. Yet, the burden of responsibility weighed on him. Every patient he treated, every life he touched, reminded him of the fragility of hope. "I'm beginning to wonder," he confessed to Evelyn in a hushed tone, "if this little dog is trying to tell us something, if he's a symbol of the unspoken pain many of us carry." The conversation was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Officer Martinez, a kind but firm presence who had been overseeing the police inquiry. "Dr. Miller, Nurse Ramirez," she said, her tone both respectful and urgent. "We've received several calls reporting unusual behavior around the hospital. We need to understand if this is connected to any ongoing incident." Andrew exchanged a brief look with Evelyn, both silently agreeing that the police involvement only added layers to the mystery rather than clarifying it. Officer Martinez continued, "We're not here to accuse, only to ensure the safety of everyone. But if this puppy has any connection to what we're investigating, please let us know immediately." Andrew reassured her that they would keep a watchful eye on Buddy and share any pertinent details. Deep inside, however, he wondered if the very fact that the puppy had chosen their hospital was no coincidence at all. As the day unfolded, interactions between staff members grew increasingly laden with emotion. Conversations in hushed tones near the nurses' station revolved around shared memories of loss and the healing power of unexpected kindness. Buddy's quiet, soulful eyes seemed to invite them all to confront their own buried sorrows and find solace in the presence of another living being who had suffered in silence. By midday, the police had finished their preliminary rounds, leaving the hospital with more questions than answers. Yet, for Dr. Miller and Nurse Ramirez, one truth became ever clearer. The puppy's nightly visits were not random acts of misfortune. They were a call to face the heartache that had long been neglected in the sterile halls of St. Mary's. And as they resolved to continue searching for answers, their shared determination offered a glimmer of hope, a promise that even amidst mystery and despair, compassion would always light the way. Late that afternoon, as shadows lengthened along the hospital corridors and the buzz of routine began to quiet, a startling discovery shattered the tentative calm. Dr. Andrew Miller was reviewing the security footage once again in a quiet corner of the staff lounge when something caught his eye. A brief, almost imperceptible glimpse of a figure in the background of one recording. It wasn't a patient or a staff member, but rather a mysterious individual who appeared to be watching Buddy intently from a distance. The camera had caught him near the entrance of the wing where Mrs. Whitman had once resided, a location that now seemed charged with an unspoken history. Andrew's heart pounded as he rewound the footage repeatedly. Each time, the image of the hooded figure grew clearer, a man whose presence was as enigmatic as it was alarming. The realization struck him. Buddy's nightly visits might not be random acts of sorrow. Instead, they could be connected to this stranger, whose silent observation hinted at a secret buried deep within the hospital's past. Unable to contain his unease, Dr. Miller rushed to Nurse Evelyn Ramirez's station. "Evelyn, you need to see this," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Together, they rewatched the footage on a larger screen in the security office. The grainy image slowly sharpened to reveal a face partially hidden by shadows. In that moment, a chill ran down both their spines, as they realized that the man's features bore an uncanny resemblance to a portrait they had seen displayed in the hospital's long-forgotten archives. A portrait of a renowned benefactor named Harold Sterling, whose mysterious disappearance decades ago had been whispered about among long-serving staff. Evelyn recalled the old rumors that Harold Sterling had once donated a significant sum to build a wing dedicated to compassionate care, a wing that, according to legend, was built on promises and secret arrangements that had never been fully explained. "Could it be?" she began hesitantly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Dr. Miller interrupted. "I think Buddy's tag may hold the clue." He gently retrieved the faded inscription on the small tag from Buddy's collar. In dim light, the nearly illegible letters seemed to rearrange themselves into a name. Harold. The revelation sent shockwaves through the two caregivers. The very same Harold Sterling, whose legacy had become almost mythic in the hospital's history, might be connected to the little puppy's inexplicable appearances. As if on cue, a sudden commotion echoed through the corridors, a low murmur that signaled the approach of the hospital administrator, Ms. Louise Carmichael, who was known for her encyclopedic knowledge of the hospital's history. Andrew and Evelyn, still reeling from the discovery, sought out Miss Carmichael in her office. "Louise, we've uncovered something that you might know about," Andrew said, showing her both the security footage and Buddy's tag. "Ms." Carmichael's eyes softened as she listened, then narrowed in on the details. "Harold Sterling, but he was not only a benefactor, but also a man shrouded in mystery," she explained quietly. "Decades ago, his donations and his personal involvement were said to be the driving force behind the hospital's expansion. But shortly after, he vanished without a trace. Some say he was a philanthropist, others that he harbored secrets too dangerous to reveal." The administrator paused, her gaze drifting toward a faded family portrait hanging on the wall, a portrait of Harold Sterling in his prime. There is a story that his spirit still watches over these halls, ensuring that his vision of compassionate care endures. But what is truly unsettling is that some believe he left behind a hidden message, one that could be triggered by something as unexpected as a stray puppy. "Miss." Carmichael's voice wavered between disbelief and sorrow as she recounted the ancient lore passed down by long-retired staff. At that very moment, the hospital's intercom crackled to life with an urgent announcement. The police presence that had been lingering outside was now intensifying. Officer Martinez's voice came through clearly. "All staff, please be advised that we are responding to new developments on the premises. Remain calm and report any unusual activity immediately." The news added an extra layer of tension to an already charged atmosphere. Dr. Miller's mind raced. Was this police mobilization connected to the mystery of Harold Sterling? Could the figure in the footage, and the clues hidden in Buddy's tag, have ignited a chain reaction leading to questions about missing funds, long-hidden documents, or even unresolved cases from the hospital's past? The possibility that a ghost from the past was influencing events now felt all too real. Evelyn, with gentle conviction, said, "We must dig deeper. Buddy isn't just a lost animal. He's a living messenger from a past that the hospital has kept secret for too long." With Ms. Carmichael's reluctant blessing, the trio resolved to explore the hospital archives and Harold Sterling's files. Their quest for answers was now intertwined with the mystery of Buddy's inexplicable presence, and with the possibility that Harold Sterling's legacy was far more complex and haunting than anyone had ever imagined. As the evening approached and the shadow of the police investigation loomed, Dr. Miller, Nurse Ramirez, and Mrs. Carmichael began to piece together fragments of a story that would shake the very foundation of St. Mary's Hospital. In the dim light of the archival room, among yellowed documents and forgotten photographs, the first real clue emerged: a handwritten note tucked away in an old ledger that read, "For those who seek truth in loyalty, follow the silent tears." In that moment, it became clear that Buddy's tearful run was not merely an act of sorrow. It was the spark that would ignite a decades-old mystery, binding past and present in a tale of love, loss, and redemption. In the wake of the startling revelation about Harold Sterling and the mysterious connection with Buddy, the atmosphere at St. Mary's Hospital shifted dramatically. The once quiet corridors now buzzed with hushed conversations, uncertainty, and a palpable sense of urgency as each staff member tried to reconcile the past with the present. Dr. Andrew Miller sat in his small office, the glow from his desk lamp illuminating a stack of handwritten notes and archival documents he and Nurse Evelyn Ramirez had gathered. His normally steady hands trembled slightly as he reread Ms. Carmichael's account of Harold Sterling's disappearance and the eerie lore surrounding his legacy. Every detail of the discovery, the faded tag on Buddy's collar, the grainy image of the hooded figure, and the cryptic note from the archives had left him with more questions than answers. "I can't shake the feeling that we're standing on the edge of something far bigger than any one of us expected," he murmured to himself. His inner conflict was not just professional, but deeply personal. For years, he had prided himself on the rationality and order of medicine. Yet tonight, emotions and mysteries that defied logic began to take root in his heart. Across the hall, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez found herself surrounded by concerned colleagues. A small group of seasoned nurses, many of whom had endured their own share of heartbreak, gathered in the quiet recess of the break room. Their faces bore lines of worry as they exchanged stories about inexplicable events in the hospital's past. Evelyn, ever the compassionate listener, led the conversation with a calm assurance that belied the uncertainty they all felt. "Listen, I know this is hard to believe," Evelyn said softly, addressing a group of attentive nurses. "But sometimes, the most painful memories and secrets find a way to resurface when we least expect it. Buddy's visits. They might be his way of trying to tell us something important about the people and history we've long ignored." Her words resonated with her peers, many of whom had seen firsthand the toll that loss and grief could take on a heart. Their expressions, a mix of skepticism and hope, gradually softened as they began to consider the possibility that this tiny creature was a living link to a hidden past. Meanwhile, Ms. Louise Carmichael, the hospital administrator, retreated to her office after the initial rush of revelations. For decades, she had been the keeper of St. Mary's history, a role that required a blend of administrative precision and deep personal commitment to the institution's legacy. And as with the rediscovery of Harold Sterling's story, she felt an urgent responsibility to preserve not only the hospital's reputation, but its very soul. Ms. Carmichael reviewed old records and faded photographs from the hospital archives, her eyes lingering on the portrait of Harold Sterling. The image of the benefactor, once a proud symbol of hope and charity, now seemed shrouded in mystery and melancholy. "I always believed that our hospital was built on more than just medical expertise," she confided to a trusted assistant. "It was built on love, sacrifice, and yes, even secrets. We owe it to Harold and to everyone who came before us to honor that legacy with honesty and compassion." The arrival of Officer Martinez, who had been keeping a close watch on the hospital's developments, added a new layer of complexity to the unfolding events. In a quiet conversation in the hospital's administrative wing, she reassured Ms. Carmichael and Dr. Miller, "We're not here to interfere with your work or your history. We're simply trying to ensure that if any elements of this mystery pose a risk, we're prepared to act. I understand this is unusual, but please keep us informed." Dr. Miller nodded, though his eyes betrayed an inner turmoil. "It's not just about risks," he replied quietly. "It's about understanding a part of our past that we've long kept hidden. And right now, I feel like we're all being called to confront it together." His words echoed in the quiet room as he carefully organized the notes and evidence they had uncovered. As the day wore on, the hospital staff began to adapt to the new reality. Small adjustments were made, more frequent checks of the security footage, discreet conversations with long-time employees, and even a few visits to retired staff who might recall more details about Harold Sterling's contributions and disappearance. A sense of camaraderie began to emerge among those who had been drawn into the mystery. Even as uncertainty loomed large, the shared pursuit of truth united them. For the many women on staff, veteran nurses and administrators alike, this unfolding drama stirred memories of their own losses and long-forgotten dreams. They saw in Buddy's soulful eyes a reflection of their past struggles, a reminder that even in the twilight of life, there could be moments of profound revelation. In quiet moments over tea or during late-night shifts, they exchanged stories of love and heartbreak, drawing strength from one another as they faced the enigmatic resurgence of history. By the close of the day, the once isolated mysteries of Harold Sterling's legacy and Buddy's inexplicable appearances had woven themselves into the fabric of daily life at St. Mary's. Although fear and uncertainty still lingered, each staff member, be it Dr. Miller, Nurse Ramirez, Ms. Carmichael, or the many others, began to adjust. Embracing the challenge as a call to action, they resolved to honor the past, protect the present, and build a future where every hidden tear and every whispered secret might finally find its place in the light. As the mystery of Harold Sterling and Buddy's inexplicable appearances began to weave itself deeper into the daily life of St. Mary's Hospital, new challenges emerged from unexpected corners. The staff's shared determination to uncover the truth was now complicated by a series of additional developments that threatened not only their quest for answers, but also the fragile sense of unity that had started to blossom among them. Late one afternoon, while Dr. Andrew Miller was busy reviewing additional security footage, he received an unexpected call from an unfamiliar number. On the other end of the line was a soft-spoken voice, identifying herself as Marianne Collins, a retired nurse who had once worked at the hospital during Harold Sterling's heyday. Marianne's tone was gentle, yet laced with urgency. "Dr. Miller," she began hesitantly, "I know you're trying to unravel the mystery of Buddy and Harold Sterling. There's something I need to share, something about a promise made long ago that might connect to all of this." Marianne's recollection of whispered conversations and secret meetings from decades past hinted at a subplot that the current generation of staff had never known. Her story suggested that Harold Sterling, in his final days before disappearing, had entrusted a small group of loyal nurses with a personal letter, a letter that spoke of his dreams, his regrets, and a hidden fund meant to benefit the hospital's most vulnerable patients. At the same time, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez found herself grappling with her own inner turmoil. One evening, while closing up a long shift, Evelyn discovered an old scrapbook tucked away in the supply closet. The faded photographs and handwritten notes painted a vivid picture of the hospital's history, a history filled with both triumph and heartache. Among these relics was a tender letter addressed to the caregivers, signed by none other than Harold Sterling himself. The letter spoke of love, hope, and the belief that compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. For Evelyn, whose own past was marked by personal loss and the challenges of caring for patients with heavy burdens, this letter resonated deeply. It also raised questions. Had Harold Sterling's promise been forgotten over the years? And could its fulfillment now offer a new ray of hope for the hospital? As these personal revelations began to surface, a more immediate challenge presented itself. News of the ongoing investigation had reached a local journalist, Olivia Reed, whose feature story on the hidden legacy of St. Mary's was already stirring interest among the community. Olivia was determined to get to the bottom of the unfolding drama and to uncover the truth behind Harold Sterling's mysterious disappearance. However, her presence also brought with it a wave of media scrutiny that unsettled some of the hospital's senior staff. "We can't allow our history to be exploited for sensational headlines," Ms. Louise Carmichael insisted during a late evening meeting with the hospital board. The board, caught between preserving the hospital's revered image and embracing the opportunity for a renewed public profile, now found itself in a delicate balancing act. At the same time, whispers began to circulate among the hospital staff about another unexpected subplot. a claim that Buddy, the tearful puppy, might have had a previous connection to a family with ties to Harold Sterling's legacy, a distant relative, identified only as Mr. Leonard Hayes, had reportedly come forward with documents suggesting that Buddy was once part of a lineage of rescue animals cared for by a benefactor's family. Although initially dismissed as rumor, the possibility that Buddy could be more than a stray, a living emblem of Harold Sterling's compassionate vision, added yet another layer of complexity. For the staff, especially for those who had grown to see Buddy as a symbol of hope, this revelation was both heartwarming and disconcerting. It implied that the mystery they were untangling might have personal and historical significance far beyond what they had first imagined. In the midst of these developments, tensions began to rise internally. Dr. Miller, who had always been driven by logic and empathy, found himself caught between the need to honor the hospital's storied past and the practicalities of running a modern medical institution. His nightly vigils with Buddy were now interspersed with long discussions with Nurse Ramirez and Administrator Carmichael about the feasibility of reopening old cases and honoring Harold Sterling's long-forgotten promises. "We owe it to him, Doctor," Miller would say, his voice low and determined, "to see his dream realized, not just for the hospital, but for every soul that walks through its doors." His words, though filled with passion, sparked debates among the staff about where to draw the line between honoring legacy and disrupting current operations. As the days passed, the pressure mounted from multiple fronts. Olivia Reed's persistent questions and probing interviews began to draw attention from not only the local community, but also from some influential benefactors who had long supported St. Mary's. While this public interest promised potential financial support, it also threatened to unearth secrets that some preferred remained buried. The interplay of these forces, the ghost of a benevolent benefactor, the soulful plea of a stray puppy, the legacy of a forgotten promise, and the relentless drive of a determined journalist, was transforming St. Mary's Hospital into a living drama where every staff member was both a witness and a participant. By the end of this turbulent week, it was clear that the mystery was far from being a simple tale of a lonely puppy. Instead, it was evolving into a rich tapestry of interconnected stories, of past promises, unresolved grief, and the enduring power of compassion. Each subplot introduced new challenges that threatened to derail their mission, yet also offered the possibility of healing old wounds. In the quiet moments after each hectic day, as the staff gathered in small groups to reflect, it was evident that their journey had become much more than an investigation. It had become a shared quest for redemption, unity, and the rekindling of hope in a place that had seen both miracles and heartache. As dusk settled over St. Mary's Hospital, the air grew heavy with anticipation and a creeping sense of danger. The once familiar corridors now seemed to whisper secrets in the low hum of machinery and the distant murmur of anxious voices. Every shadow appeared to hide an untold story, and every flicker of light hinted at mysteries that were far from resolved. Dr. Andrew Miller found himself on a late-night round, his footsteps echoing in the nearly deserted hallways. He couldn't shake the feeling that the hospital was no longer just a place of healing. It had become a theater for secrets waiting to be unearthed. Earlier that day, Officer Martinez had mentioned a peculiar report, an anonymous tip suggesting that someone had been seen lurking near the hospital's archives just moments before a power fluctuation occurred. Though the incident was quickly dismissed as a technical glitch, a nagging doubt had taken root in Andrew's mind. Was it merely coincidence, or was there an unseen hand manipulating events from the shadows? Meanwhile, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez was busy tending to a particularly distressed elderly patient in room 217. Yet, even as she offered kind words and gentle reassurances, her thoughts drifted back to the cryptic clues they had uncovered. The archival note, "For those who seek truth in loyalty, follow the silent tears," played over and over in her mind. Was it simply an echo of Harold Sterling's old promise, or was it a directive meant for them? Every time Buddy, the tearful puppy, whimpered softly in the background, Evelyn felt as though the tiny creature was urging them onward, as if his sorrow was the key to unlocking a deeper truth. In a dimly lit corner of the hospital's administrative wing, Ms. Louise Carmichael pored over a collection of newly surfaced documents. These papers, retrieved from a locked cabinet in the archives, contained references to clandestine meetings and coded instructions related to Harold Sterling's philanthropic ventures. One document, in particular, caught her attention, a letter that mentioned the guardian of lost hopes and alluded to a secret rendezvous scheduled to occur on the hospital grounds. Carmichael's pulse quickened as she realized that these hints were not isolated relics of the past. They were active clues that could reshape the entire legacy of St. Mary's. Just as the tension reached its peak, a series of unexpected events began to unfold. Olivia Reed, the determined journalist, managed to secure an exclusive interview with a mysterious individual who claimed to have been a close confidant of Harold Sterling. The interview, conducted in a shadowed corner of a local cafe, was filled with cryptic statements. Harold Sterling always believed that truth was a gift wrapped in sorrow, the source whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He left behind more than just money and memories. He left a challenge to those brave enough to follow his silent tears. Olivia's words sent ripples of intrigue throughout the community, and soon whispers of a hidden benefactor began to circulate on social media and in hushed conversations among long-time hospital staff. Back at the hospital, security cameras recorded a series of unusual events. In one grainy clip, a figure cloaked in dark attire was seen entering the storage area adjacent to the archives. The person's face was obscured, and their movements were deliberate, as if they were retracing steps known only to a select few. Although the footage was quickly deemed inconclusive, it added fuel to the growing fire of speculation. Was someone actively trying to retrieve or perhaps hide evidence related to Harold Sterling's legacy? Amid these escalating tensions, the hospital's mood became increasingly fractured. In whispered conversations among the night staff, theories abounded. Could it be that Buddy isn't just a stray, but a messenger? One nurse speculated quietly. I heard from a retired janitor that Harold Sterling used to say, "The smallest tear could reveal the greatest truth," another added, her eyes wide with wonder. The collective anxiety was palpable, a mix of fear, curiosity, and the raw emotion that came from confronting long-buried memories. Dr. Miller, ever the calm center in the storm of emerging clues, felt a mounting pressure to act. "We're standing at a crossroads," he confided to Evelyn during a brief pause in their rounds. "Every moment we delay, the mystery deepens, and the possibility that someone might be tampering with our past becomes all too real." His voice was laced with determination, but even he could not deny the chill that raced down his spine with every new hint. Outside, the night grew colder. The sound of distant sirens mingled with the soft patter of rain against the windows, as if nature itself was setting the stage for what was to come. In the quiet moments before the storm of revelations would break open, the staff of St. Mary's Hospital braced themselves. They knew that the threads of Harold Sterling's legacy and the silent messages carried by Buddy's tearful eyes were pulling them toward a confrontation with secrets that could change everything they thought they knew about their cherished institution. In that charged atmosphere, every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, and every trembling heartbeat served as a reminder. The truth was on the horizon, and with it, the promise of both redemption and heartache. In the quiet hours after dusk, as the storm outside intensified, the web of intertwined stories at St. Mary's Hospital grew ever more complex and deeply personal. The earlier revelations about Harold Sterling's secret legacy and Buddy's mysterious appearances had not only stirred questions, but had also begun to forge unexpected bonds among those who dared to search for the truth. Dr. Andrew Miller found himself revisiting the security footage one more time in the soft glow of his office lamp. There, amid the grainy images, he spotted a subtle detail he hadn't noticed before. A small, nearly imperceptible silhouette in the background of one clip. A figure that seemed to be exchanging a silent nod with a shadowy individual near the hospital's old records room. Andrew's heart pounded as he realized that this brief encounter hinted at a clandestine connection between someone from the past and a current hospital staff member. He knew that further investigation might not only illuminate Harold Sterling's hidden promises, but also reveal connections among his own colleagues that had long remained dormant. Meanwhile, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez, having spent the evening meticulously reviewing the archival letter from Harold Sterling, began reaching out to her longtime friends among the hospital's veteran nurses. Over late-night cups of chamomile tea in the break room, they exchanged memories of whispered stories passed down through generations of caregivers. One nurse, Margaret, recalled how Sterling's generosity had once brought the hospital together during times of hardship. "I remember," Margaret said softly. "When I was a young nurse, we all believed that even a single tear could spark a miracle. Now seeing Buddy's sorrowful eyes and hearing Sterling's words again, it feels as if those miracles are calling us back." This quiet intimacy among the nurses forged a new collective determination. They decided to form an informal legacy circle, meeting regularly to share personal stories of loss, hope, and healing. In these gatherings, the pain of the past blended with a cautious optimism for the future. Their shared experiences reminded them, and the hospital's many patients, that beneath every professional facade lay a heart that had known both deep sorrow and profound love. Elsewhere, Miss Louise Carmichael had taken to spending evenings in the hospital's long-forgotten archival room. Surrounded by yellow documents and faded photographs, she sifted through records not only of Harold Sterling's donations, but also of family histories and patient notes. There, she discovered a series of letters written by Sterling himself, letters addressed to those who care with their hearts and to the guardians of hope. Each word resonated with her own sense of responsibility, and she began to see that preserving the hospital's legacy required more than just financial stability. It required nurturing the human connections that had always defined St. Mary's. The quiet determination of the staff soon caught the attention of Olivia Reed, the relentless journalist whose interviews had already hinted at a hidden benefactor. Olivia arranged a follow-up meeting with a retired hospital administrator who had once worked closely with Sterling. Over a quiet dinner at a local diner, the former administrator, Mr. Raymond Hayes, opened up about a secret committee that Sterling had formed, a group dedicated to preserving the spirit of compassion long after his disappearance. "Harold believed," Raymond confided in a trembling voice, "that every act of kindness, every tear shed in sorrow or joy, was part of a greater tapestry. He wanted us to connect these threads so that no one's story would ever be lost." Raymond's words resonated deeply with Olivia, who began to see the unfolding mystery not as a series of isolated events, but as a tapestry of lives interwoven by shared pain and mutual redemption. Back at the hospital, a chance encounter in the courtyard brought together two seemingly disparate threads of the mystery. Dr. Miller, while taking a brief walk to clear his mind, encountered Officer Martinez outside the main entrance. In the dim light of a street lamp, the officer confided her own personal stake in the investigation. "My sister worked here for years," she revealed quietly. "I remember her telling me how the hospital wasn't just a building, it was a living, breathing testament to compassion and perseverance." Seeing all this unfold makes me believe that even those lost to time can still guide us if we listen. Her words struck a chord with Andrew, and in that moment, they both recognized that the mystery was as much about healing old wounds as it was about uncovering hidden truths. As days passed, the various subplots began to merge. The informal legacy circle, the archival discoveries, and the heartfelt interviews with retired staff members created a shared narrative that drew everyone closer. Bertie, the tiny puppy with tearful eyes, became a living symbol of all these converging stories. His presence in the hospital was no longer a mere oddity. It was a reminder of the enduring power of loyalty and compassion, a beacon that encouraged everyone to keep moving forward despite the shadows of the past. In quiet moments, staff members would catch each other's eyes in the hallways, sharing silent acknowledgements of their intertwined fates. A gentle touch on the arm or a knowing smile conveyed that they were all part of a larger story, a story that spanned decades, transcended loss, and celebrated the quiet triumphs of the human spirit. By the end of a particularly reflective afternoon, as the hospital began to settle into a new rhythm marked by cautious hope and a united quest for truth, Dr. Miller realized that the mystery of Harold Sterling and Buddy's silent messages was no longer a burden to bear alone. It had become a shared journey, a journey that bound the past to the present, connecting each caregiver's personal story with the hospital's collective legacy. In that shared journey, every whispered conversation, Every tender gesture and every heartfelt memory served as a thread in a tapestry of healing, a tapestry that promised that no tear, no matter how silent, would ever be in vain. As autumn deepened into a chilling winter at St. Mary's Hospital, the once gentle murmur of shared memories and quiet hope transformed into a rising tide of conflict and urgency. What began as a search for hidden legacies and gentle healing was now evolving into a battle for truth, one that threatened to tear apart the fragile bonds that had united the staff. Late one stormy evening, Dr. Andrew Miller gathered with Nurse Evelyn Ramirez and Ms. Louise Carmichael in the hospital's conference room. The air was heavy with tension as they reviewed the latest developments. On the table lay a stack of newly discovered documents from the archives, along with recordings of anonymous phone calls and footage of an unidentified figure seen near the restricted records room. Dr. Miller's voice, usually calm and measured, quavered as he stated, "These documents suggest that someone has been tampering with Harold Sterling's legacy, and I fear it might not be a well-intentioned hand." Across from him, Ms. Carmichael's eyes flashed with a mixture of determination and worry. "If what we suspect is true, it means that there are forces at play who want to bury these secrets forever," she declared. "I've been receiving unsettling messages from anonymous sources warning us to stop digging. It's as if someone is desperate to keep the past hidden." Outside the conference room, the tension had spilled into the corridors. Whispers echoed among the night staff, with some accusing certain long-time employees of withholding information, while others questioned whether the hospital administration was prepared to handle the fallout from these revelations. In a quiet corner near the nurses' station, a group of veteran nurses from the Legacy Circle clashed over a heated issue. Should they risk exposing painful details of the hospital's past, or should they preserve the dignity of the institution at all costs? "Our patients deserve transparency, but at what price?" one nurse demanded, her voice shaking with anger and sorrow. "If these secrets come out, they could shatter the trust that has taken decades to build." Simultaneously, Officer Martinez, still monitoring the hospital's activities, arrived with urgent news. In a hushed tone, she informed Dr. Miller that a series of coordinated break-ins had been reported at several historical storage rooms within the hospital. "It appears that someone has been accessing old records and removing key documents," she explained. "These aren't random acts. They're systematic, and they point directly to the very heart of Harold Sterling's dealings." Her revelation sent a ripple of shock through the gathered team. Dr. Miller's mind raced as he considered the implications. If someone was determined to erase Sterling's legacy, then they must have a hidden agenda, and that agenda could endanger not only the hospital's reputation, but also the lives of those who had come to rely on its history as a beacon of hope. In the midst of this escalating crisis, Olivia Reed's latest article broke on local news. Her headline, "St. Mary's Scandal, the Hidden Battle Over a Hospital's Legacy," sent shockwaves through the community. The article painted a vivid picture of internal strife, with eyewitness accounts of secret meetings and alleged attempts by powerful figures to quash the investigation. The resulting media frenzy put immense pressure on the hospital administration, fueling further divisions among staff and raising fears among long-time patients and their families. Ms. Carmichael found herself at a crossroads. With mounting pressure from both the hospital board and the media, she had to make a choice: either cooperate fully with the public inquiry or attempt a discreet internal resolution that might preserve the hospital's dignity, but at the risk of further internal conflict. In a late-night meeting with Dr. Miller and a small group of trusted administrators, she argued, "If we try to hide these secrets any longer, we risk not only our legacy, but the trust our community has in us. We must confront this head-on, even if it means exposing painful truths." Dr. Miller, torn between his commitment to healing and the duty to uncover the truth, struggled with an inner conflict that threatened to paralyze him. "Every time I see Buddy's tearful eyes, I'm reminded of the cost of our silence," he admitted, his voice barely audible over the storm raging outside. "I fear that if we don't act now, the damage will be irreparable." As midnight approached, the hospital became a battlefield of ideologies and emotions. The police investigation intensified, with Officer Martinez leading a discreet but determined probe into the break-ins. Simultaneously, a faction of staff, led by a few outspoken members of the Legacy Circle, began to organize a public forum, a town hall meeting, to demand accountability from the hospital administration. Their plan was to present the uncovered evidence and invite the community to weigh in on the hospital's future. In one final, tense moment before the planned forum, Dr. Miller met privately with Nurse Ramirez on a dimly lit stairwell. "We're at a tipping point, Evelyn," he whispered, his eyes reflecting both determination and vulnerability. "I know the truth might hurt, but I believe it can also heal us if we're brave enough to face it." Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling as she gripped his. "We owe it to Harold Sterling, to Buddy, and to everyone who has ever trusted this hospital, to let the truth shine through the darkness," she replied, her voice resolute. With the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within, the stage was now set. The conflicts had reached a critical turning point, with secrets poised to burst into the light, and with every decision carrying the weight of the past, present, and future of St. Mary's Hospital. The tension at St. Mary's Hospital reached a boiling point as the secrets of the past collided with the demands of the present. Under the weight of mounting evidence and public scrutiny, the staff and administration were forced into a series of confrontations that would ultimately define the hospital's future. In the early hours of a stormy evening, Dr. Andrew Miller and Nurse Evelyn Ramirez found themselves summoned to an emergency meeting in the hospital's main conference room. The room was filled with a diverse mix of voices: senior administrators, representatives from the hospital board, and a few key members of the Legacy Circle. At the head of the table, Ms. Louise Carmichael, visibly burdened yet resolute, addressed the assembled group. "We are at a crossroads," she began, her tone both urgent and reflective. "The evidence we've gathered and the mounting pressure from the community and the media leaves us no choice but to confront the hidden parts of our history. We must decide whether to reveal the full extent of Harold Sterling's legacy, with all its pain and promise, or to continue in silence and risk further erosion of trust." A heated discussion erupted almost immediately. One board member, his voice tinged with anger, slammed his hand on the table. "This is unacceptable. We built our reputation on dignity and compassion. If these revelations tear apart our image, we risk losing everything our patients believe in." His words were met with murmurs of agreement from some, while others exchanged worried glances, knowing that hiding the truth could create even deeper wounds. "Doctor." Miller rose from his seat, his expression earnest and determined. "I understand the fear of exposure," he said firmly, "but hiding these truths will only breed mistrust. Buddy's tearful appearances, the secret documents, the break-ins, they're all part of a story that demands resolution. We owe it to Harold Sterling, to our patients, and to ourselves to confront this head-on." At that moment, a representative from the local police, Officer Martinez, joined the meeting via video call. Her presence lent the proceedings an air of gravity. "I want to make one thing clear," she stated, her tone measured yet forceful. "The ongoing investigation into the archival break-ins isn't meant to target you as individuals. It's about ensuring that if any criminal activity is involved in tampering with historical records, we address it appropriately. I urge you to cooperate fully with our inquiry." The confrontation reached its peak when Olivia Reed's latest article began circulating in print and online. The headline read, "St. Mary's on the Edge, Legacy, Lies, and a Hospital in Turmoil." Olivia, now present in person at the meeting as a guest to document the unfolding drama, challenged the administration directly. "Miss Carmichael," she said, her voice steady, "how do you justify keeping these secrets when the public has a right to know? Isn't transparency the only path to healing?" The administrator's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Ms. Reed, this isn't about withholding the truth," she countered, "but about protecting the dignity of those who've suffered. Some secrets, once revealed, can cause more harm than good." Her words, though measured, sparked an intense debate. Many in the room began questioning whether the protection of legacy should come at the cost of accountability and truth. As the meeting continued, a turning point emerged. A senior member of the Legacy Circle, a longtime nurse named Margaret, stood up slowly and addressed the room. "I've seen too many lives broken by secrets," she said softly, yet with undeniable force. Harold Sterling entrusted us with his vision, a vision that was not just about charity, but about genuine human connection and healing. We must honor that vision by choosing truth over comfort. Yes, there will be pain, but in facing the truth, we can begin to heal. Her words resonated deeply with many in the room, shifting the mood from defensive to resolute. After a long, silent pause, a consensus began to form. Dr. Miller proposed a bold plan to hold a public town hall meeting where the staff, patients, and community members could come together to hear the full story of Harold Sterling's legacy. "We need to open our doors and our hearts," he insisted, "and let the truth, however painful, be the first step towards rebuilding trust." Ms. Carmichael, after a moment of visible struggle, nodded slowly. "I agree," she said. "We cannot continue to bury the past. It's time to face these truths together, even if it means exposing our vulnerabilities." The decision was met with both relief and apprehension, as everyone knew that the upcoming public confrontation would be the climax of their collective struggle. In a final, emotionally charged moment before adjourning the meeting, Dr. Miller looked around the table, his eyes meeting those of his colleagues. "We are making a choice today," he declared, "to stand for transparency, to honor every tear shed in this hospital, and to allow the legacy of Harold Sterling to guide us into a future built on truth and compassion." As the meeting dispersed, the storm outside seemed to mirror the turbulent emotions within the hospital. The staff, now united by a shared resolve, braced themselves for the impending town hall meeting, a confrontation that promised to expose long-hidden secrets and force each individual to make personal and collective decisions. In that moment, every whispered conversation and every determined glance reflected a community ready to face its past and forge a path toward redemption. As the day of the town hall meeting approached, St. Mary's Hospital braced itself for the inevitable reckoning. The storm outside had finally subsided, but within the hospital walls, an atmosphere of electric anticipation and raw emotion prevailed. Every staff member, from the newest nurse to the most seasoned administrator, felt the weight of the decision they had collectively made. The past acture, with its buried secrets and untold promises, was about to meet the unyielding light of truth. In the early morning hours, Dr. Andrew Miller arrived at the hospital, his expression a mixture of determination and quiet apprehension. He had spent the previous night reviewing every piece of evidence, from the archival documents to the whispered recollections of veteran staff, and the magnitude of the moment was not lost on him. Buddy, the tearful puppy who had inadvertently become the symbol of their journey, sat quietly at his feet, as if aware that today was the day when hidden sorrows and long-kept truths would finally be revealed. Inside the administrative wing, Ms. Louise Carmichael prepared for the town hall with a somber resolve. In her office, she arranged a display of old photographs and letters from Harold Sterling, a tribute to the benefactor whose enigmatic legacy had sparked the investigation. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted a faded portrait of Sterling, knowing that every document and every memory was now part of a larger narrative that had to be shared with the community. "This is our moment," she murmured to herself, "to transform pain into healing." At the same time, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez and the core members of the Legacy Circle gathered in a quiet conference room to rehearse their testimonies. Their conversation was a blend of personal recollections and collective determination. "We've all suffered in our own way," Evelyn said softly, "but today we stand together, not as individuals burdened by sorrow, but as a community ready to embrace the truth." Each nurse, many of whom had dedicated decades to caring for the vulnerable, nodded in solemn agreement. Their shared vulnerability had become a powerful force, and they knew that exposing the hidden chapters of the hospital's past was essential for the healing process. As the town hall meeting began in the hospital's auditorium, the tension in the air was almost palpable. Chairs were filled with a mix of patients, family members, local residents, and even a few curious reporters. A hushed silence fell over the room as Dr. Miller took the stage. The bright lights shone on his face, revealing the traces of sleepless nights and the determination of a man who had risked everything in pursuit of truth. "Today," he began, his voice steady but imbued with emotion, "we stand at the threshold of both revelation and redemption. For too long, secrets have festered in the shadows of these halls. The legacy of Harold Sterling, the story behind our cherished institution, and yes, Buddy's silent cry for help, demand that we face the truth head-on. His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom had their own stories of loss and hope. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as Ms. Carmichael stepped forward to share the historical documents and personal letters that had emerged from the archives. With trembling hands, she read aloud a poignant excerpt from one of Harold Sterling's letters. "Let the tears of the forgotten water the seeds of tomorrow's hope." The audience was visibly moved, some eyes filled with tears, others with expressions of determined resolve. At that moment, a murmur rippled through the crowd when Officer Martinez took the stage to report on the investigation into the archival break-ins. "Our probe has confirmed that someone deliberately targeted these records," she stated firmly. "The evidence points to a calculated effort to suppress the truth about Harold Sterling's contributions and the promises he made." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room, setting the stage for an emotional climax that would soon test the very fabric of the hospital's legacy. In a particularly charged exchange, Olivia Reed, now standing at the edge of the stage with her recorder in hand, asked, "Do you believe that by revealing these secrets, you risk further hurting those who have already suffered?" Dr. Miller met her gaze with quiet intensity. "The truth, however painful, is the only path to genuine healing. We must let these stories be heard so that we can build a future rooted in honesty and compassion." As the town hall meeting entered its final moments, the sense of impending resolution was overwhelming. Every whispered conversation, every tear and every determined nod in the audience reflected a collective readiness to embrace the difficult journey ahead. The meeting had become more than an administrative decision. It was a cathartic moment for a community that had long held onto its wounds in silence. With the peak tension reached, the stage was now set for the ultimate resolution. The hospital, its staff, and the community braced themselves for the next chapter, a final confrontation with the remnants of the past and the promise of transformation. In that charged atmosphere, Buddy, the small puppy who had silently borne witness to every moment, sat quietly near Dr. Miller's feet, his soulful eyes mirroring the hope that even the deepest sorrows can lead to a brighter tomorrow. The town hall meeting had ended, but the charged atmosphere in St. Mary's Hospital lingered long into the night. With every revelation exposed before a community desperate for healing, Dr. Andrew Miller and his colleagues now stood at the precipice of a final confrontation, a moment where the hidden past and the pressing demands of the present would collide. In the hushed darkness of the hospital's main auditorium, where the echoes of impassioned speeches still resonated, Dr. Miller felt the weight of every tear, every whispered secret, and every unspoken promise. He had just finished outlining the full extent of Harold Sterling's secret legacy, detailing not only the philanthropic dream that had once united the hospital, but also the nefarious efforts to erase key records from the archives. The words he had spoken that day had unleashed a torrent of emotions, anger, sorrow, and hope, that now pulsed through the very walls of the institution. Outside the auditorium, under a storm-cleared sky, Buddy, the small, tearful puppy who had become the living symbol of their collective pain and hope, sat quietly with Dr. Miller. As he knelt down to gently stroke the pup's soft head, he whispered, "You've led us here, little one. I promise we won't let your tears be in vain." In that moment, the doctor felt a surge of determination. The evidence of deliberate record tampering, the testimony of long-time staff, and even the impassioned pleas of the community had converged into an unbreakable call for justice. Inside, Ms. Louise Carmichael was not merely a bystander anymore. With trembling hands and a resolute heart, she unveiled a final piece of evidence, a sealed envelope discovered hidden behind a false wall in the hospital archives. Opening it, with the careful scrutiny of someone who had spent decades safeguarding the institution's history, she revealed a set of original letters and documents written by Harold Sterling himself. One letter in particular read, "When shadows cloud the present, let the light of truth guide you." In each tear lies the promise of a new beginning. The authenticity of these documents was confirmed by Officer Martinez, whose investigation had brought to light the calculated break-ins meant to suppress this very legacy. The revelation sent shockwaves throughout the hospital. In a sudden, heart-pounding moment, the final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. The anonymous figure caught on security footage was not a saboteur driven solely by greed. It was a former employee, a devoted follower of Harold Sterling's vision, who had risked everything to protect his dream. This figure, now identified as Mr. Julian Carter, stepped forward during a press conference organized by the hospital the following morning. With voice quivering between remorse and determination, Julian explained that he had been coerced by an outside party intent on selling the hospital's secrets to the highest bidder. His confession, broadcast live, stunned the community and provided the critical turning point needed to expose the corruption that had plagued the institution. As the scandal unraveled in real time, the hospital found itself flooded with support from unexpected quarters. Former patients, families, and local activists rallied around St. Mary's, insisting that every hidden tear and every suppressed truth be honored by moving forward with complete transparency. Olivia Reed's groundbreaking series of investigative reports had reached a crescendo, painting an unflinching portrait of a hospital caught between its storied past and a turbulent present, but one that was determined to heal. In a final, emotionally charged confrontation, Dr. Miller addressed the gathered community and media at a specially convened press conference. Standing before a sea of expectant faces, he declared, "Today, we stand together. We have faced the darkest parts of our past, the secrets that almost broke us, and we have chosen to embrace the truth. Harold Sterling's legacy is not one of shame, but a call to act with compassion and integrity. Buddy, whose tears have led us here, reminds us that every sorrow has the power to spark a miracle." The words resonated deeply. In that moment, the hospital's long-hidden wounds began to heal as every individual, staff, patients, and community members alike, recognized that the painful truths they had unearthed were the seeds of a brighter, more honest future. As the applause grew and the reporters continued to capture every emotional nuance, Ms. Carmichael revealed plans to establish a new foundation in Harold Sterling's name. A fund dedicated not only to preserving the hospital's history, but also to ensuring that every patient, every caregiver, and every vulnerable soul would receive the care and compassion they deserved. Officer Martinez announced that the investigation into the archival break-ins had led to multiple arrests, and the corrupt network behind the tampering was now facing justice. Dr. Miller, standing at the center of it all with Buddy still nestled at his side, felt an overwhelming sense of relief and purpose. The truth had emerged from the shadows, and with it, a promise of redemption and renewal. In the final poignant moments of the day, as the hospital community embraced one another, Dr. Miller's voice trembled with emotion when he said, "Let this be our new beginning. May every tear shed in the darkness give way to a light that guides us forward." Thus, the climax of this tumultuous journey brought not only emotional catharsis, but also a powerful resolution, a transformation that united the hospital's past and present in a shared vision of hope, healing, and unwavering truth. In the soft light of a new dawn, St. Mary's Hospital stood transformed, not only by the revelations that had rocked its very foundations, but by the healing that truth had brought. The events of the past weeks, from tearful puppy encounters to explosive uncovering of long-hidden secrets, had left an indelible mark on every soul who had been part of this journey. Dr. Andrew Miller, still cradling Buddy in his arms, surveyed the hospital with a mixture of relief and quiet pride. Over the past few tumultuous days, he had watched colleagues, nurses, administrators, and even security staff rise above fear and uncertainty to confront a legacy steeped in both sorrow and hope. This, he thought, is not the end but a beginning, a promise that every tear shed in darkness can light the way toward healing. His eyes, once filled with the weight of unanswered questions, now shone with renewed purpose as he recalled the cathartic town hall meeting where every hidden secret had been laid bare. Across the hospital, Nurse Evelyn Ramirez gathered with members of the newly formed Legacy Circle in the warm, familiar embrace of the break room. Over cups of tea and quiet conversation, they revisited memories, stories of hardship, loss, and the boundless compassion that had defined their years of service. "We've carried so much pain in silence," Evelyn remarked softly. "But now, by sharing our stories, we are mending not only our own hearts, but also the heart of this hospital." The nurses exchanged knowing smiles and gentle nods, each one feeling that the weight of the past had been lifted, replaced by the promise of collective healing. In her office, Ms. Louise Carmichael meticulously organized the recovered archival documents and Harold Sterling's letters into a new display for the hospital's lobby, a living testament to the institution's storied past and its hopeful future. With a steady hand, she arranged a framed photograph of Harold Sterling beside a delicate, handwritten note. "Let the tears of the forgotten water the seeds of tomorrow's hope." The display served not only as a reminder of the sacrifices and secret promises that had built the hospital, but also as a beacon for those who might seek comfort in its legacy. "We have honored our past," she thought, "and in doing so we have paved the way for a brighter, more transparent future." The community's response had been overwhelming. Olivia Reed's investigative series, which had once sparked controversy and heated debate, now resonated as a story of transformation and redemption. Local residents, former patients and families had rallied around the hospital, donating their time and resources to the new foundation established in Harold Sterling's name. This foundation, dedicated to preserving history, supporting vulnerable patients, and ensuring that every life was treated with dignity, became a symbol of what could be achieved when truth and compassion joined forces. Officer Martinez's relentless investigation had not only led to the dismantling of the corrupt network that had tried to suppress the hospital's history, but it had also restored a measure of faith in justice and accountability. Standing alongside her colleagues at a community forum, she reassured everyone that the dark forces of secrecy were being replaced by transparency, and that every individual's right to know would be safeguarded. As the weeks turned into months, St. Mary's Hospital evolved into a community hub for healing, not just of the body, but of the soul. Dr. Miller continued to work tirelessly, always pausing for a moment to pat Buddy's head and smile at the memory of the puppy's tearful run that had set this incredible journey in motion. In quiet moments, he would reflect on the remarkable transformation that had occurred. A once hidden legacy had become a source of collective strength and resilience. The town hall meeting had given way to ongoing public forums, open houses, and heartfelt celebrations of both the past and the future. Every month, staff and community members gathered to share their stories, to honor those who had suffered, and to celebrate the healing that only honesty and compassion can bring. In these gatherings, the once painful memories were transformed into lessons of hope, a continuous reminder that no sorrow was too deep to be healed. And now, as the hospital's corridors hummed with renewed purpose and vibrant energy, the final call to action resonated for everyone. If you have ever been moved by a story of resilience, if you believe in the power of truth to transform lives, then join us in carrying this legacy forward. Subscribe to our channel, share our journey with friends and family, and stay connected as we continue to reveal stories that touch the heart and uplift the spirit. Together, let's ensure that every tear, every whisper of loss, becomes a stepping stone toward a future built on compassion, honesty, and hope. Thank you for watching and being a part of our community. Click here to subscribe, and don't miss our next video. A new chapter in a story that celebrates life, love, and the enduring power of truth.